Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be going over a beginner-friendly lesson on the basics of Python programming. So I will be taking you through an interactive training session for Python. It will be hands-on training. We will be going over data types, variables, and functions in Python. Python is a widely used programming language known for its simplicity and its readability. So Python code is almost close enough to the English language. If you have not installed Python yet, go back and watch the video on how to install and set up Python in Visual Studio Code. To begin this process, I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code, go to File, New, and then I'll call this Basics, since we're going to be going over basics of Python, and then I'll click Create. It will ask me to save. Python files always have .py extension, so I'll do basics.py so that it will recognize that as a Python file. I'll leave it to my desktop and then I'll click Create. I'll put in a couple of comments here for what we're going to be covering. Lesson 1, Basics of Python Programming, Variables, Data Types and Functions. Begin with variables. Create a variable called age and then designate a value for that using the equal sign. This variable that we just created, age, will be used to store the actual value, which is 27. In terms of data types, we can say this will be variables that contain integer values. The next variable will be the floating point variable height, and I will give it a value of 5.9. And then we'll create a string variable. Strings are designated with quotation marks, single quote or double quote. Create a string variable called name and give it a name of Alice. The next variable that we'll create will be Boolean variable called isStudent. We want to see if Alice is a student. Value that to true. In this case, we could say variables and data types. Since we have covered everything, so it will be variables and data types. Data types. Variables are used to store data values, and data types, they are classifications of various types of data. As you have seen here, we are classifying the age as an integer and we're giving it 27, height as a floating point number, name as a string, isStudent, the Boolean type variable that takes a value of true. We are going to use the print function to actually display the numbers on a screen. If we print age, it will give us 27, print height, print name, and print isStudent. I'm going to save it by using Ctrl S on my keyboard, or you could go to File and click Save. You will still do the same thing. Run Python file in dedicated terminal. It is printing out the age value, printing the height, and it's printing name and true. If we just see these values without the code, then this will not make sense. We're going to update it. So let's say we wanted to print something descriptive. I'm just going to delete that and then print. Use the F string format. So my name is, then we'll pass the name variable. I am, pass another variable placeholder, and then I am age this with the height of, pass the height variable. There is actually no command for the F string format with a height of 7.1, and then it's true, I am a student. Pass the isStudent Boolean variable. I am a student. My name is Alice. I am 27 years old with a height of 5.9. It is true, I am a student. So you can see this output is more descriptive than printing these values without the description. Okay, moving on. This was variables and data types. In this second part of the lesson, we are going to do basic operations. Let me clear this. Variables and data type was 1.1. Now we're moving on to 1.2, basic arithmetic operations in Python. We are going to create another variable, a, give it a 5, and then b, 15. First operation will be addition. Addition is combining two numbers together to have the sum. Sum will be equal to a plus b. Print the variable sum. That should give me 20. So a plus b gives me 20 because the value for the variable a is 5 and the value for the variable b is 15. When you sum the two, it will give us 20. That is the addition operator in Python. We're going to stick with the same two variables a and b. We have seen addition. Now we're going to go to subtraction, create another variable called difference. You could call this variable anything. As long as you use the arithmetic operator for subtraction, you're going to have the right output. Difference is b minus a. Print difference, run that. The difference will be 10. Let me uncomment this print so that it is not going to be printing out everything. We just want it to print the subtraction and give us the value for the subtraction. Save it again and then I'll click execute. So now the difference, b minus a, 15 minus 5 is 10. So that is our subtraction arithmetic operator in Python. So I'm just going to clear this again. And then moving on to the multiplication operator, multiplication in Python. For multiplication, we're going to create a variable called product. You could call that variable anything so long as you use the multiplication designation for Python. A times b, so print product. So if I run this now, you should see 75. Let me clear this again. Now we're moving on to the division operator, division in Python. We're going to create a variable called quotient. So the quotient will be b divided by a. If you print quotient, you should have 3. I'm going to run it. In this case, it's printing 3.0. Let's say we wanted to change that to just a 3. Typecast this variable as an integer. Use int. Run this again. Now you see the second output is just 3 because we typecast it from a float to an integer just by using the integer data type. Let's go on to the next one. Let me comment this out so we don't see the output. Clear this as well. If you put another forward slash, this data type should now evaluate to an integer. We're going to cover modulus. The modulus operator is designated in Python by a percentage sign. Create a variable called remainder equals b remainder a, and then print the remainder variable. Let me clear my terminal. The output is 0. 15 modulus 5 is 0. If we change our variables here to, let's say, 16, we will have 16 modulus 5. The answer will be 1. So let's save that and run it again. Click run. So our answer is 1. Those are arithmetic operators in Python. Our next lesson will be control structures in Python. Let me uncomment this so that we will be moving over to control structures and not printing out the output for the previous session. Control structures in Python. What are control structures? Control structures are basically tools that allow you to control the flow of your code in Python. The first control structure that we're going to be discussing will be conditional statements. Conditional statements are logical statements. In Python, conditional statements are designated by if, elif, and else. If the variable number is greater than 0, print positive number. Else, if number is less than 0, print negative number. Else, print 0. So we have a variable called number. And then if that number is greater than 0, then we print positive number. If it is less than 0, we print negative number. Else, if it is not within any of these two conditions, we print word 0. If I run that piece of code now, it will print positive number because 10 is greater than 0. So let me change it now to a negative so that we'll print and see what output we get. Negative 2, for instance. So now if I print, I'm expecting to get is negative number because negative 2 is less than 0. Print it again. If I change that to 0 and then I run this again, the third output should be 0. As you can see, it is 0. This is conditional statements in Python. Clear this. The next control structure that we're going to be going over for this basic lesson of Python will be loops. What are loops? So loops are simple iterations that allows for repetitive execution of the same block of code until it hits a breakpoint. You have two types of loops, while loops and for loops. Let's start with while loops. While loops continue to execute as long as the condition is true. In this case, I'm going to give you an example of a simple while loop in Python. Create a variable called count. Count is equal to 0, and then I'll use a while loop. While the count variable is less than 5, print the variable count. it will actually give me a range of values, 0 to 4. If count is less than 5, we want to print count plus 1. So 5 is the breakpoint. So let me save this and then we'll run. Click run. It gave us values from 0 to 4 and then it stopped at 4 because 4 is less than 5. If we change this condition less than 5 to, let's say, 10, continue to run until it hits 9. So if I execute this again, you'll see that it will give me a range of values from 0 through 9. Basically this. That is the while loop. Clear this. We are going to go into for loop. Do an example of a for loop. For I in range 5, print I. If I run this now, it will give us 5 numbers from 0 to 4. Let me just run it. If I change this to 3 and I run it again, it gives me a range of numbers from 0 to 2. That is for loops in Python. Now we're going to go to functions. Functions help you to organize your code into reusable blocks. You have built-in functions and user-defined functions. Now we're going to start with the user-defined functions, def, and then we'll give our function name. We'll say great and passing a name variable, name, and we want it to return. Return is a built-in function. Return my name is, then we'll pass the variable name to this function, create another variable called message. That variable will use the function that we just created, great Eric. To see the output, we want to use the built-in function, which is the print function. We want to print the variable message. Let's change this to say hello. When we print message, it will say hello Eric. Let's run that and see. It is printing hello Eric. This is how you self-define a function. Use the syntax, which is def, and then the function name, and then you pass in the argument, which is name, and you want to return a particular value. You want to return that value of name, which is going to be defined by this variable called message, and we're passing Eric as the argument for that self-defined function that we created. I mean, we're just printing out message. Uncomment the print. We don't want it to print out any output. Okay, now we're going to move on to collections. So collections in Python help you store different types of objects. The first collection we're going to be looking at will be list. Let's store multiple items in a single variable. Let's say we are talking about fruits, for instance. We're creating a list of fruits. In this case, I can pass in multiple fruit types: apples, oranges, bananas. Let me clear this. Print fruits. It will print a list of all of those fruits that we have listed. Save this. If I run this, you should see a list of the fruits. So you have apples, you have oranges, and you have bananas. If I want to print apple, I will say print fruits, pass in the value of 0 to that list. So if I print this now, you see it will print apples. Print. If you want to print bananas, you will say print fruits and then you put 2 because Python counting starts from 0. So if I put print 2, it will print the third item on the list, which will be bananas. That is a list. We're going to move on to dictionaries. Dictionaries in Python are used to store key value pairs. A dictionary is designated by curly brackets like that. So this is an example of a dictionary. We'll call it person, and that person will take an argument of a name, Alice for instance, and then we have an age. We'll give it a value of 24. To display these values, print person, and then we'll pass the name. Run this, it's printing out Alice. If I change this to age, it will print 24. So Alice is 24 years old. In this lesson, you learned basic Python concepts, data types, control structures, functions, and collections. We will continue to create more hands-on Python tutorials, so feel free to explore, practice these fundamentals to build a strong foundation in Python programming, and ask questions and come back to watch more advanced Python as you become comfortable with these basics. Thank you for watching. If you have not done so, this will be a good time to subscribe and turn on your notifications to be the first to see our videos on Python programming.